I need to get this out because for almost 2 years, my family treated me like the villain in a story my ex-wife wrote with one hand on my bank account and the other wrapped around my brother's life. And the worst part is that I actually believed for a while that maybe I had somehow earned the humiliation she served me. My name is Daniel. I was married to Vanessa for 7 years, and if you had met her back then, you would have understood exactly how she got away with everything, because she had that polished, soft-spoken way of moving through the world, the kind of voice that made people lean closer, the kind of smile that made my mother call her a blessing, and the kind of patience that only appeared when someone important watched her. At home, Vanessa was different in the colder way, not screaming or throwing plates, but studying every weak spot I had, every insecurity, every family wound I still carried from childhood, and then pressing on those places gently enough that I looked unstable if I reacted, while she looked like the calm woman trapped with a difficult man. My younger brother Marcus was always the golden one, the son my father understood, the one who walked into rooms like life owed him applause, while I became the useful son, the reliable one, the one who fixed problems, covered bills, handled paperwork, and stayed quiet because quiet people make convenient furniture in families like mine. Vanessa noticed that dynamic before I did, and once she understood that my family already treated me like the backup generator, she built her whole plan around it, because she did not need to destroy my reputation from scratch, when she could simply pour gasoline on the cracks that were already there. By year 3, Vanessa had access to my business accounts because I ran a small video production company and she had a background in bookkeeping, and by year 4, money started going missing in ways that looked like my own mistakes. Small vendor payments I did not remember approving, equipment purchases that arrived and then disappeared, client refunds that made no sense, and little accounting errors she always explained with that wounded calm she used whenever she wanted me to feel like a monster for asking a normal question. She never stole in one huge dramatic move because Vanessa was smarter than that, and she knew people notice fire but ignore smoke if it spreads slowly enough, so she took little pieces from the business, little pieces from my savings, little pieces from my sanity, and by the time I started tracking everything myself, she had already spent months telling my family I had become paranoid, controlling, angry, and obsessed with money. Marcus started coming around more during that same period, and I told myself it was good because my brother and I had never been close, but the truth was that he came over when I was out filming, stayed too long when Vanessa was home alone, and always left behind some harmless excuse, like he had helped her move boxes, fix a sink, or talk through how stressed I made her feel. The part I did not understand then was that Marcus was not the only man orbiting her life, because Vanessa had another world tucked behind fake names, private accounts, hotel receipts, cash deposits, and consulting payments that looked boring enough to ignore. And later I would learn that she had been selling access to herself for years, while using my business like a laundry room for money she never wanted anyone to trace. The divorce started after Vanessa cried at my parents' house during a Sunday dinner and told everyone I had become impossible to live with. And she did it while I was in the bathroom washing my hands, which means I walked back into the dining room and watched my mother look at me like I had entered wearing somebody else's blood. She told them I monitored her spending, controlled her schedule, yelled about imagined affairs, and made her afraid to come home. And I stood there with wet hands and no script, because the person who lies first often wins the first round, especially when she cries in front of people who already prefer a neat story over an ugly truth. I tried to defend myself, but Vanessa did not need to prove anything because she had spent months preparing the room before I entered it, and Marcus sat beside her with his hand on her shoulder, looking devastated in that theatrical way that made my father immediately tell me I needed help. The divorce became a slow public execution because Vanessa walked through it with screenshots without context, bank statements arranged to make me look reckless, stories rehearsed until they came out smooth, and a family of witnesses who had never seen me hurt her, but had heard enough from her to decide they did not need to. She took the house, half the business savings, the dog, and my reputation, then spent 11 months posting healing quotes and captions about surviving what people never saw, while Marcus appeared in the comments with supportive lines that made relatives praise him for being such a good man, and I stayed silent because every time I opened my mouth, someone told me not to make things worse. Then my mother called me on a Wednesday evening and told me Vanessa and Marcus were getting married, and I remember standing in a parking lot with a camera bag digging into my shoulder while the sun hit the windshield so hard I had to squint, because somehow that dumb little physical detail is what my brain saved instead of the full body shock of hearing that my ex-wife was marrying my brother less than a year after our divorce. Vanessa sent me an invitation through my mother, because sending it directly would have looked cruel, and the message attached to it said she hoped I could find peace and celebrate the family moving forward, which was such a perfect Vanessa sentence because it sounded graceful unless you understood that the woman had gutted my life, climbed into my brother's bed, and then asked me to clap for the renovation. I did not want to go, but my father asked me to attend because he was stepping back from the family supply business soon and wanted everyone to appear united, and that sentence told me more than he meant to reveal because Marcus had been pushing hard for a larger role in the company. Vanessa had suddenly become interested in family finance, and my destroyed reputation had turned me into the only person no one wanted near the paperwork. The wedding happened at a renovated lake lodge, and I arrived in a dark suit with the emotional posture of a man walking into his own funeral while everyone pretended he had simply come for dinner, while Vanessa looked beautiful in the way dangerous things can look beautiful from a distance, all soft fabric and dead eyes whenever she thought no one important watched. My relatives hugged me too tightly, praised my maturity, and acted like my presence meant everyone had been right all along, because if the betrayed man attends the wedding, then maybe it was never really betrayal. Maybe it was just an awkward chapter before the family found a more pleasing arrangement. Near midnight, my father pulled me aside and asked if I would help edit a clean family version of the wedding video because Marcus had complained about the price, and apparently my pain did not disqualify me from unpaid technical labor when the family needed something polished. I told him to send the files when they came in, and that answer sounds weak when I write it, but you have to understand that I had spent years being trained to survive by absorbing insults quietly, and sometimes your spine does not come back in one heroic moment. Sometimes it comes back later, when you sit alone with the thing they handed you because they thought you were too broken to use it. 3 days after the wedding, the videographer sent a shared folder to my father, my mother, Marcus, Vanessa, and me, and the files included ceremony footage, reception footage, speeches, dance clips, and one folder labeled Guest Booth Raw. I opened that folder at 2 in the morning because I could not sleep, and I told myself I was only checking the file structure, but the truth is that some part of me wanted pain because pain at least felt honest compared to the polite poison everyone had been feeding me. Most of the clips were normal wedding messages until I found a file from 1:17 a.m. recorded after the reception had mostly emptied, with Vanessa sitting sideways in the booth, Marcus standing behind her with his tie loose, and Vanessa's maid of honor Olivia squeezed into the corner holding a champagne bottle like she was hosting a confession no sober person had approved. The video started messy and drunk, but not drunk enough to erase intent, and within the first minute I felt the air change in my apartment because Vanessa stopped performing as the wounded survivor and started performing as the winner. She talked to the camera like she was leaving a private trophy message for herself, and she bragged about how easy it had been to turn my family against me because I had always looked tense, always worked too much, always explained myself badly, and people like that were easy to frame as unstable if you cried first and smiled later. Then Olivia said something that made the whole clip turn from disgusting into completely unreal because she laughed and asked Vanessa if Marcus still thought that night had made him special. And Vanessa leaned back in that wedding dress, looking proud and ruined at the same time, then said Marcus had no idea how easy he was to use when you mix sex, jealousy, and the promise of finally beating his brother. The camera did not show anything graphic, and I thank God for that because I did not need to see more than the room already gave me, with Vanessa's dress half undone, Marcus standing behind her with that stupid loose tie and dead smile, and Olivia sitting beside them like the three of them had just turned my family into some private joke. But the words were worse than any image could have been, because Vanessa admitted they had spent part of the wedding night together, all three of them. And she said it like it was not shameful, not reckless, not the kind of thing that should make a new husband question every second of his life, but like it was a victory lap after stealing my marriage, my brother, my money, and whatever was left of my place in that family. Marcus tried to laugh, but you could see his face change because that was the first moment he realized he had not won Vanessa from me. He had joined the same dirty little game she had been playing with other men for years, and Olivia, drunk enough to forget the camera, but sober enough to sound cruel, asked if the private clients ever got the same wedding night package, or if Marcus got a family discount. That was when Vanessa laughed again and said men always think they are different when they pay with something bigger than cash. And then she started talking about the fake vendor payments, the escort money, the private meetings hidden inside my business accounts, and the way Marcus had been useful because he had access to my father, access to the company, and a desperate need to feel like he had finally taken something from me. I paused the video there because my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the laptop, and I remember thinking that the affair alone would have broken me. The theft alone would have broken me, the fake pregnancy alone would have broken me, but this was something else entirely, because my ex-wife had not just cheated with my brother, she had turned her body, my business, and my family's trust into one long dirty transaction, and the worst part was that she sounded proud. I forced myself to keep watching, because if Vanessa had been stupid enough to confess once, I needed to know how deep the rot went, and the answer was deeper than I had ever let myself imagine, because she talked about the divorce like it had been a project, not a heartbreak, and she explained that she had saved certain messages, cut out the parts where she provoked fights, sent my mother carefully chosen screenshots, and let Marcus act concerned in front of my parents, because a brother's concern looked more convincing than a lover's betrayal. Then she admitted that the pregnancy scare she used during the divorce was not real. And I still hate writing that sentence because there are lies so ugly they make the room feel dirty even years later. But Vanessa had told my mother she lost a baby during the stress of leaving me, and my mother had used that story to justify every cold look, every accusation, every time she told me I had destroyed more than a marriage. On that video, Vanessa laughed about it because the test had belonged to someone else, because the timing made her look fragile, because my mother cried when she heard it, and because Marcus, my own brother, had told her the family would never forgive me after that. That was the moment something inside me finally went cold enough to work properly, and for the first time in almost 2 years, I did not feel like a man begging to be believed. I felt like a man holding a loaded truth that everyone else had handed him by mistake. Near the end, she said the quiet part that destroyed Marcus too, because she explained, in front of a camera he forgot was recording, that marrying him was the easiest way into the family business because my father trusted him, my mother worshipped him, and I had already been pushed far enough out that nobody would listen if I warned them. She said Marcus was useful because he wanted to win against me more than he wanted to think, and she said once my father transferred authority to him, she would handle the books properly this time because she had learned from the mistakes she made while draining me. Marcus's smile changed when she said that just for a second, and if you slow the video down, you can see the exact moment my brother realized he was not the partner in her scheme. He was the next wallet wearing a wedding ring. I did not send the video that night because rage makes people sloppy, and Vanessa had survived this long because she counted on everyone around her reacting emotionally while she prepared paperwork. So I downloaded the folder, backed it up to 3 drives, uploaded a copy to a private legal folder, and became boring, careful, and patient. I called my attorney the next morning, and when she watched the clip in her office 2 days later, she did not give me some dramatic movie speech. She just leaned back, folded her hands, and said Vanessa had made several very expensive mistakes. We started with the money because courts understand money faster than pain, and my attorney brought in a forensic accountant who found the fake vendors, the repeated transfer patterns, the supplier connection to Marcus's friend, and the way Vanessa had shifted blame toward my business before using my supposed instability as leverage in the divorce. I could have sent it privately and let the lawyers handle it quietly, But my father forced the final scene into existence because 2 weeks after the wedding, he invited everyone to his house for what he called a family reset dinner, which was really a stage meeting where he planned to announce Marcus's expanded role in the company and pressure me to stop dragging old bitterness into the future. Everyone came dressed like respectability could disinfect them. Vanessa in cream and gold, Marcus wearing the watch my father gave him after the wedding, my mother moving around with nervous energy, and my father sitting at the head of the table with a folder full of documents he had not let me review. My father started talking about unity, trust, forgiveness, and the importance of keeping the business in the hands of people who respected family. And while he talked, I connected my laptop to the living room television because he had asked me to show a short edited wedding montage before dessert. I told them I had found one clip from the wedding night that everyone needed to see before any documents got signed, and I did not raise my voice, explain, or accuse, because after years of being talked over, I had finally found a witness that did not get nervous, did not forget details, and did not care who the golden child was. The video filled the screen, and at first everyone looked confused because they saw Vanessa in the guest booth, smiling with that loose, drunk confidence. But then her voice came through the speakers, clear enough to slice through every excuse in the house, and the room slowly transformed from annoyed curiosity into social death, happening in real time. Before the clip reached the part where the room became too private, I stopped it, because I wanted the truth exposed, not revenge porn, and I told them there was more footage, more than enough to prove what happened. But nobody in that room needed to watch bodies to understand the crime, because Vanessa's own words had already done the damage. That made it worse somehow, because I did not have to show anything graphic for everyone to understand it, and the silence that followed was heavier than screaming, with my mother staring at Vanessa like she had invited a disease into the family, my father looking at Marcus like he had just watched his favorite son turn into a liability, and Marcus standing there with his mouth half open because the same woman he helped use against me had just exposed him as one more man she played for access. My mother covered her mouth when Vanessa described how easy she had been to manipulate, and I watched the woman who had called me cruel, unstable, and spiritually broken finally hear that her grief had been used as a prop. My father sat still through the money part, but his face changed when Marcus's name came up, because betrayal from a daughter-in-law was one thing, betrayal from the son he planned to hand the company to was a different kind of wound, the kind that hits pride before it hits the heart. Vanessa went pale in stages, first offended, then confused, then calculating, then truly afraid, and I realized I had never actually seen fear on her face before, only performances of fear, only weaponized trembling, only tears she could start and stop depending on who entered the room. When the video reached the part where she admitted the pregnancy lie, my mother made a sound I still hear sometimes. Not a scream, not a sob. Just this broken little collapse of air from a person realizing she had helped punish her own son over a tragedy that never existed. Vanessa tried to save herself the only way she knew how, by turning soft, shaking her voice, saying she had been drunk, saying people exaggerate, saying the video lacked context, and I watched every person in that room finally experience the Vanessa I had lived with. The Vanessa who could rebuild reality from scraps if nobody stopped her quickly. But the problem with a confession recorded in your own voice is that it does not care how pretty you cry afterward. And when my father closed his folder without signing a single document, that small sound, paper sliding against paper, ended Marcus's future in the company more completely than any screaming could have. The next month turned into the kind of collapse people pretend only happens to other families. Because the forensic accountant finished the report, my attorney filed to reopen parts of the divorce settlement, the company froze Marcus's access, my father removed him from every operational role, and Vanessa discovered that marrying into the family she had poisoned did not protect her once the poison reached the people with bank passwords. Marcus moved out of their new house before the thank you cards were mailed, and Vanessa tried to say Marcus had pressured her, tried to say Olivia had twisted everything, tried to float the idea that I had edited the video because I worked in production, but the raw metadata, the videographer's original files, the timestamps, and Olivia's panicked confirmation killed that story before it learned to walk. Olivia folded immediately because she realized Vanessa would happily drag her under the bus to save herself, and she gave a statement that confirmed Vanessa had talked about the plan before, not as a joke, not as drunken nonsense, but as a strategy she believed made her smarter than everyone else. The house from my divorce became part of the legal fight. The business money became uglier because Marcus had touched enough of the transfers to turn family betrayal into potential criminal exposure. And my father, who had spent years calling me sensitive, suddenly learned that numbers do not care which son throws a better barbecue. Vanessa lost her job first because the owner of the boutique firm where she handled client accounts heard about the investigation, asked questions, and decided that a woman caught bragging on video about fake vendors, escort money, private clients, and financial manipulation should not be near anyone else's books. Then she lost Marcus, or at least she lost the version of Marcus that felt powerful beside her, because once his company access disappeared and his parents stopped protecting him, he became just another angry man sitting in a half-furnished rental, realizing he had traded his brother for a woman who had already planned his replacement before the honeymoon photos finished uploading. Then she lost my mother, because after the pregnancy lie came out, something in my mother hardened, and she sent Vanessa one message through the attorneys making it clear she never wanted direct contact again. The legal side took almost a year, and I will not pretend everything became perfect, because stories like this do not end with magical justice, full refunds, and a family dinner where everyone hugs under warm lighting. But Vanessa had to return a large portion of the settlement. Marcus had to repay money connected to the fake vendor scheme. The company survived after my father brought in outside oversight, and I got my business back under my full control with cleaner accounts than I had ever kept during the marriage. Vanessa tried to rebuild herself online for a while, posting about narcissistic abuse, betrayal, and women being punished for telling the truth, but people who had seen the video quietly stopped engaging. The wedding photos disappeared, then the anniversary countdown disappeared, then Marcus disappeared from her profile, and then Vanessa disappeared from the city. I did not play that video because I wanted to humiliate Vanessa at a family dinner. I played it because every private path had been blocked by the same people who called me bitter. Every calm explanation had been dismissed as obsession. Every warning had been treated like proof I was unstable. And at some point, when a liar builds a throne in the middle of your life, you do not owe them a private demolition. The part that still messes with me is how close she came to winning completely, because if the videographer had shut the booth down at midnight, if my father had not asked me to edit the footage, if Vanessa had been slightly less proud of her own cruelty, if Marcus had been slightly less stupid, and if Olivia had remembered cameras record things, then Vanessa would probably be sitting in my father's company right now, smiling over spreadsheets, rewriting another man's reality while everyone praised her strength. That thought used to keep me awake, but now it reminds me of something colder and more useful, because people like Vanessa do not always lose because good wins. They lose because arrogance makes them sloppy, because cruelty wants an audience, and because the kind of person who destroys you for sport eventually needs to hear herself describe the masterpiece. Then I played one video from their wedding night, and in that video, she did what she had always done best. Except this time she performed for the only witness she could not manipulate because the camera did not care about her tears, the microphone did not care about Marcus's excuses, and the truth finally entered the room with my voice nowhere near it.